Okay. All right, we're starting Shmuel Bet today. Perek Aleph. Don't forget, at the end of Shmuel Aleph, we saw the death of Shaul and his sons. So a young lad comes to David and tells him about the terrible events that happened, that the Jewish people were beaten in battle by the Plishtim, and that Shaul and Yehonatan were killed. David asks the boy, "How do you know?" And the boy says, "Well, I was walking around. I was going around, and I saw Shaul hunched over his spear, and he called me, and he said, 'Who are you?' And I told him that I was an Amaleki," which we'll see later on. It means it seems like he was a Ger Amaleki. He was a Jew, but he had converted from the nation of Amalek, and he told me that I should kill him because he didn't want the Plishtim to have the pleasure, so to say. So the boy says, and I did it. I listened to him and I killed him. And I brought you, David, I brought his crown, and I brought another piece of jewelry, a etzadah, which usually means like a bracelet. I brought it here for you. David tears his garments, so do all of his servants, and they start crying and fasting. David immediately calls over one of his men, and he says, "Kill that boy. How did he dare send his hand forth against the Mashiach Hashem, the anointed one of God? How could he dare do so?" Even though, Shaul was about to die, Shaul was his enemy, all these things, but David still said, as we saw many times, no one lifts their hands against the Mashiach of Hashem, the anointed king of Hashem, and he kills this young Ger Amaleki. David then, at the end of the Perek, the whole last section of the Perek, is a kinah, a lamentation that David laments over the death of Shaul and Yehonatan. It starts, though, in Pasuk Yudchet with Vayomer lelamed b'nei Yehuda kashet hine ktuva al sefer hayashar. What does that have to do with anything? So the Mefarshim explain that this is really like a introduction, and it's saying as follows. Obviously, the people were very down at this point. We lost the war, said David. Don't worry. The tribe of Yehuda knows how to fight. And it's written in Sefer Yashar, which is the Torah, Sefer Bereshit. It says that Lo Yisro Shevet mi Yehuda, right? Yehuda Yadcha B'oref Oivecha, etc., etc. In other words, Yehuda is supposed to be the king, and therefore there will be a continuation to the kingship of Israel. And then he goes on to lament the death of Shaul and Yehonatan. It's a very beautiful, poetic lament. I'll just point out a few psukim. Obviously you have to go through it one by one and really understand it because it's written in a poetic form. But a few psukim that are very famous psukim. Look at Pasuk Chav Gimel. Shaul v'Yehonatan hane'ehavim, who were beloved, v'hani'imim, and they were so nice, so pleasant, b'chayehem, during their lifetimes, uvemotam lo nifradu, and during their death they weren't separated. So when do we say that? In Avar Achamim. That's part of the Avar Achamim prayer on Shabbat. For the death of tzaddikim, we say, right, and then the continuation also, Minisharim Kalu, they were swifter than eagles. Me'arayot Gaveru, they were stronger than lions. Another famous phrase in Pasuk Chav Hey, Eich naflu giborim, David lament. How did the warriors, the strong ones, how did they fall? And a very poignant expression of David HaMelech in Pasuk Chav Vav, Tsar li alecha achi Yehonatan. So I'm so pained over you, my brother Yonatan. Na'amta li ma'od, you were so pleasant to me. Niflata ahavatcha li me'avat nashim. The love that I had for you was greater than the love that one has for a woman. That's how much he loved Yonatan. And don't take it in any way that is not intended, okay? I know today's atmosphere say, oh, he was homosexual. No, I'm sorry, he was not. He loved Yehonatan in a way that, in a what is it called? Platonic relationship, right? He loved Yehonatan as a person. Anyway, that is Perek Aleph. Perek Bet. Hashem commands David, or David first asks Hashem, and Hashem says, go up to Hebron. How amazing this is. We are in Parshat Chayesara, the big Shabbos in Hebron. First time Hebron is mentioned in the Torah. Well, it's also a very important place in the timeline of David HaMelech's kingship, because Hashem tells him, go to Hebron with your wives and your family. What? Chayesara is the first time it's mentioned. Did I not say that? I'm sorry, that's what I meant to say. That's the first time that Hebron is mentioned, and here we have Hebron also in terms of David HaMelech. So David does that. He goes there and they dwell in Hebron and its environs. And the tribe of Yehudah as a whole anoints and accepts David as their king. But he's still not the king of all of Israel, just of his own Shevet. David then blesses, he sends a special message to the people of Yavesh Gilad. If you remember, they were the ones who went on a night raid and they took down the bodies of Shaul and his sons and they buried them. And David here praises them and blesses them for what they did. In Pasuk Chet, we start talking about another important episode. Avner ben Ner, if you remember, he was the army general of Shaul. He decides to anoint or to appoint Shaul's son Ishbosheth as the next king of Israel. Okay? Ishbosheth, then the Nach in Pasuk Yud Aleph and Yud and Yud Aleph sort of summarize Ishbosheth's reign over Israel, and it says that he reigned for 2 years, which is very problematic because in Pasuk Yud Aleph it says that David was king for 7.5 years in Hebron. So it can't be that Ishbosheth was the king for only 2 years, because then we're missing years in terms of the kingship of. It doesn't work out. So a lot of the Mefarshim say that it doesn't mean that Ishbosheth was a king only for 2 years. He was a king over all of Yisrael, except for Yehudah, of course, for 2 years, and for another 5.5 years he was a king over certain places, which are mentioned in the preceding psukim, in Pasuk Tet, for example, right? So he was a partial king for 5.5 years, and then he was a more of a king for 2 years. Yes?
Is Ishbosheth his real name, or it's like a disparaging?
Good question. I'm not sure. As far as I know, that was his name. Don't forget, we had the name Ikavod also, right? Lack of kavod. It was because of the circumstances surrounding the birth of Ikavod, right? He was the son of one of Pinchas, I think, Eli's son. So it could be for whatever reason he was named that. But you're right; it doesn't sound like a very nice name. I'd have to look into that a little more. Avner, this is a very sad episode. Avner and Yoav meet at a certain breicha. The Mefarshim discuss whether it was one purposely went to battle the other, or it was really just a random meeting of the troops. And Avner in Pasuk Yud Daled suggests they were like each sitting on this opposite sides of a pool, the breicha, in a place called Giv'on. So Avner suggests, why don't we play war here? Why don't we play? It says v'yisachaku lefanim. Yisachaku doesn't mean play a game of soccer. It meant let's play war. Let's do a mock battle. But it's not really a mock battle, as you'll see. So 12 soldiers from each side go together and fight each other, and it becomes a bloodbath. These 12, seemingly from the Pesukim, killed each other. Like they killed each other out. And then that started a whole battle, a whole war, I could even call it. And and the ones who came out on top were Yoav. Yoav was the general of David, and they are the ones that came out on top big time, as we'll see at the end of the story. But before I go on, yeah.
Why did they do this before?
Because you have to understand, there was bad blood between them. David was appointed as king over Yehudah. He should really be the king over everybody. And Avner wanted, the kingship to continue in the house of Shaul. So, it was very uncomfortable. So they said, okay, let's just have our, a few of our soldiers battle each other. And I guess that'll determine who wins. But it ended up turning into this whole terrible battle. Avner, okay, then, again, the troops of David, Yoav and his troops, end up really beating the troops of Avner badly, and they're starting to pursue them. And specifically, Asael, remember that name? Asael, one of the brothers of Yoav, there was Yoav, Abishai, and Asael, all children of Tzeruiah. Asael was very fast. And he started running after Avner. Now Avner looks behind him and says, Asael, you don't want to do this. Go run after somebody else. Asael ignores him. He tries again. He says, don't do this. Go to one of the other lower soldiers and go try to run after him. And Asael ignores him. In one quick motion, Avner throws his spear backwards and hits Asael, or lunges his spear backwards and hits Asael right in the right place. It's called what is it called? El HaChomesh, which is the fifth rib, which I guess is right where the heart is, or some very important internal organ, and he kills Asael on the spot. Asael is lying there on the floor, and whenever the troops of David passed by him, they all stopped there. They couldn't go on. But nonetheless, Yoav and Avishai, two of Asael's brothers, continue pursuing Avner, and at one point, Avner says to Yoav, Hala netzach tochal cherev, is the sword going to consume us forever? In other words, we have to put a stop to this battle. Yoav answers him and says, well, you're the one who started this whole thing. But nonetheless, Yoav stops the battle. He calls everybody to stop, and that's how the battle ends. And then the Navi in Psukim Lamed and Lamed Aleph sum up the casualties. It ended up that of the men of David, 19 plus Asael were killed, meaning 20 altogether, one of them being Asael. And of the soldiers of Avner, 360. That's pretty lopsided, a lopsided battle, but still many, many Jewish people were killed. At the very end, the last pasuk, they bury Asael, and that ends that story, but we're going to see that it's not really over. David, at the beginning of Perek Gimel, David strengthens, his kingdom strengthens, he becomes more and more accepted, and Shaul's, meaning Shaul's children, Beit Shaul, his kingdom gets weaker and weaker. In Psukim Bet through Hey, the Nach tells us the names of all the children of David who were born in Hebron. They are Amnon, these are all the names you're going to hear in the continuation of the Sefer. Amnon, Kilav, Avshalom, right? Adoniah, Shephatiah, and Yitraam. Those are the names of some of David's children. We'll see others later.
Who mentions the Nava, who mentions Abigail's husband?
Yeah, I don't know why it does that. Every single time it says who Abigail, his wife Abigail, it always says Abigail, the wife of Naval Carmeli, right? Goes back to saying who she was originally married to. I don't know why. I wouldn't want someone, right? Once you're married to someone else, you're not supposed to mention the other person's previous husband or previous wife. It is a good question. I never looked into that, but it's like, why? Why does he keep on saying that?
How many wives did David actually have?
Well, here it seems only so far two, but right, there's Abigail and what was the other one's name? Achinoam, right? But you're right. I'm sorry, you're right. Here already we're listing more names, but we'll see. According to Chazal, David had 18 wives, right? Eventually, not necessarily right now.
They use that as a cap.
Right, exactly. They said that's the amount, the maximum the king is allowed to have. Okay, quickly, we got to finish this. Avner tries to strengthen the kingdom of Beit Shaul, and then something happens. Then something big happens. Ishboshet blames or accuses Avner of sleeping with one of Shaul's pilagshim, one of Shaul's concubines, named Ritzpah. Shaul had this concubine named Ritzpah, and Ishboshet accuses Avner of sleeping with her. Now the Mefarshim discuss whether that really happened or was just a totally baseless claim, or that Avner felt that he was allowed to. That once Shaul died, he was allowed to, even though you're not allowed to sleep with, you're not allowed to marry the wife of a king unless you yourself are a king. Right? Unless if the king died, you're allowed, only a king can take her. But whatever, you can see the Mefarshim, Avner felt that it was mutar, or Avner Bechal didn't do it and it was just an accusation. Either way, Avner gets extremely angry at Ishboshet, and at this point, the tables turn. Avner says, that's it, I've had it with you, and he swears that David is going to become the king over all of Israel. He's going to do everything in his power to make David the king. And you have to understand, he was more powerful than the king, than Ishboshet, who he had appointed as king. So Ishboshet couldn't do anything against him. Avner sends messengers to David and says, make a covenant with me, I'm on your side now. And David agrees, and he says to Avner, when you come to me to make this covenant, please bring my wife Michal, Bat Shaul. Don't forget, remember that episode? Shaul gave Michal, his daughter, to David for the 100 foreskins of the Plishtim, but in the end, he ended up giving her to Palti ben Laish, right? So David says, I want my wife. So David, I don't know why, because first he asked Avner, and then it says that he sent messengers to Ishboshet. In other words, if you asked Avner, why are you now asking Ishboshet? But anyway, he asks Ishboshet to give him his wife, send him his wife Michal. Ishboshet takes her away from her husband, I guess you want to call it, whether it's a whole discussion in the Gemara, whether she was married to, I think I told you this, that they never slept together. Palti was just supposed to watch her, whatever it is. It's a whole discussion in the Gemara whether, because if not, she's an Eshet Ish and she's having relations with somebody she's not allowed to, and then she wouldn't be mutter to David. It's a whole big thing. 1 second. And so Ishboshet takes her away from Paltiel ben Laish, and he, it's very hard for him. He just cries his eyes out when she's leaving him. Okay? Yes, you had a question?
If it was really just like a forced marriage thing and they didn't have any relatives anyways, and they were only married just like Shaul made it that way, why was he so sad about her leaving?
Because I guess he had hoped that he would marry her, right? A simple shot is that he was married to her and now he's losing his wife. Correct. Anyway, Avner then tries to muster the rest of the nation to David's side, meaning make them go after David, and Avner finally comes to David in Hebron. David makes a big party, a big su'udah for Avner, and Avner says to David, I'm going to get all the Jewish people, the whole rest of the nation, to follow you, and David sends Avner off in peace. Yoav and his people weren't there. Yoav, don't forget, Avner killed Yoav's brother Asael last chapter, right? So Yoav wasn't there when this whole party was taking place. He comes back from some battle that he was engaged in, and he with a lot of booty, and he hears that Avner was just here, and he goes to David and he says, "What? You sent him off in peace? He's spying on you. He's just trying to find out, how to kill you. He's not on your side." And David doesn't agree. David said, "No, Avner is on our side now." Yoav then goes and runs after Avner, or sends messengers after Avner and says, no, come back. David had something else he forgot to tell you. So Avner innocently comes back, and Yoav meets him in the gate and kills him right there. What? I can't hear you.
Isn't that where you're like, oh, he has to do Chalitza and he stabs him back?
It's coming back to me. That is ringing a bell that there is some Gemara like that, correct? Like he was saying, oh, how do you do Chalitza? Yeah, he tricked him. Okay, fine. All the Pasuk says is, in Pasuk Chav Zayin, it says, Vayateu Yoav el toch hashar ledaber ito basheli. What does basheli mean? It means in secret, or it means by accident, meaning whatever. He says, David forgot to tell you something. There's different mafarshim exactly how to explain it, but whatever it is, he somehow tricked him, and he goes and kills Avner. Okay? David hears about this and makes it clear to everybody, I had nothing to do with this. This was not me. And actually, David curses out Yoav for what he did. And then there's a great mourning over the death of Avner. David, like we saw before, wrote a whole lamentation for the death of Yonatan and Shaul. He does the same thing for Avner. He laments over the death of Avner. And the people want to give him food to eat, David, and he says, I refuse to eat until the end of the day. Like he really was sincere in his mourning over Avner, and the people accepted that. As the people were like, first, David just did a terrible thing because he killed Avner for no reason. After Avner was going over to his side, but he made it very clear that he had nothing to do with this. It was all Yoav. David explains to his people, this is the end of the Perek, Pasuk Lamed Chet, he explains to the people that at this point, the children of Tzruya, which is Yoav and Avishai, are very strong, and he, David himself, is just starting his kingship, and he doesn't yet have the power to do anything about it, but he says instead, God will get them. In other words, if I had the power, I would take care of them right now. I would kill them. But I can't. God will take care of them. And that's the end of Perek Gimel. See a lot of important stories here in these first three Prakim of Shmuel Bet.